Richard Branson's story begins not with success, but with struggle. Born in Surrey, England in 1950, Richard grew up in a world that didn't understand him. From his earliest school days, he found himself battling a condition few people could name at the time: dyslexia. Reading was a mountain he could never climb easily. Words on a page danced around, numbers slipped through his fingers. Teachers told him he was lazy. Some said he wouldn't amount to much. But what no one realized was that young Richard was training in silence. He was sharpening the skills no classroom could measure: creativity, problem-solving, imagination, and above all, resilience. At 16, frustrated by school, Richard made a bold decision. He walked away. No diploma, no safety net, no grand plan. Just a belief that his ideas mattered. For most, dropping out would mean the end. For Richard, it was the beginning. His first venture was a magazine called Student. He wanted to give young people a voice, a platform to talk about issues that mattered to them, from music to politics. With little money and no experience, he hustled for advertisers, negotiated deals, and printed copies. The magazine didn't make him rich, but it gave him something more valuable: proof that he could create something out of nothing. But Richard wasn't satisfied. He spotted another opportunity. People loved music, but records were expensive. Why not sell them by mail order, cheaper than the big stores? With that idea, the seeds of the Virgin Empire were planted. From the basement of a church, Richard and his team packaged records and shipped them to eager fans. Business grew. Soon, Virgin Records was born. Virgin Records quickly became a force in the music industry. Richard wasn't afraid to take risks. While others avoided controversial or untested artists, he signed them. Bands like the Sex Pistols, Culture Club, and later the Rolling Stones found a home with Virgin. What others called reckless, Richard called opportunity. And more often than not, he was right. The record label's success gave him momentum, but Richard was never one to stand still. He looked for industries that frustrated customers, industries bloated with rules, arrogance, and little care for the people they served. And in the 1980s, one such industry stood out: airlines. Imagine the audacity. A man with no aviation background, barely scraping by in the music business, deciding to launch an airline. Everyone thought he was crazy. Competing against massive established companies seemed impossible. But Richard didn't see giants. He saw weaknesses. He believed he could offer something better. Better food, better service, better comfort. And so, Virgin Atlantic was born. Starting with just one second-hand plane, Branson set out to redefine air travel. There were countless obstacles: lawsuits, attempts by competitors to crush him, financial disasters waiting at every corner. But Richard pressed on, driven by his belief that if you treat customers with respect and dare to be different, people will notice. And they did. Virgin Atlantic survived and eventually thrived, becoming a global airline loved by millions. But Richard's story isn't just about victories, it's also about failures. Not every Virgin company succeeded. Virgin Cola, Virgin Cars, and several others collapsed. He faced bankruptcy more than once. Each failure could have ended him. Yet Branson never saw failure as the enemy. For him, failure was feedback, a lesson, a stepping stone. Beyond business, Branson embodied risk-taking in life itself. He attempted world records in hot air balloons, crossed oceans, and embraced danger with a smile. For him, adventure wasn't a hobby, it was a philosophy. He believed life was about pushing limits, breaking barriers, and saying yes to challenges most people run from. Then came perhaps his boldest venture of all: space. With Virgin Galactic, Branson dared to imagine a world where ordinary people, not just astronauts, could experience the wonder of spaceflight. Skeptics laughed, critics doubted, and failures mounted. Yet Branson pushed forward. In 2021, he personally flew aboard a Virgin Galactic spacecraft, fulfilling a lifelong dream and proving that imagination, when fueled by persistence, can reach the stars. But behind the adventure, behind the billions, behind the global empire of more than 400 Virgin companies lies a simple truth. Richard Branson's greatest strength was his weakness. His dyslexia, once seen as a curse, became his gift. It forced him to see the world differently, to delegate tasks, to think big when others thought small. He once said, "Being dyslexic has helped me see solutions where others see problems." And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of his story. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need straight A's. You don't need everyone's approval. What you need is courage. The courage to take risks, the creativity to solve problems, and the resilience to keep going when the world tells you to stop. Richard Branson, the boy who dropped out of school at 16, became a billionaire, a pioneer, and a global icon of entrepreneurship. His Virgin brand stretches across industries, touching millions of lives. But more than that, his story touches hearts. Because he proves that the very thing others mock you for, the very thing that makes you feel different, may one day become your superpower. So the next time you doubt yourself, remember Richard Branson. Remember the teenager who couldn't spell properly, who struggled to read, who was told he'd never succeed. Remember the man who built an empire on imagination, risk, and courage. And remember this: success isn't about never falling. It's about rising every time you do. If Richard Branson could rise from struggle to create the Virgin Group, then you too can rise above every obstacle in your path.